Hey guys, in this video, I want to talk about ways I think you can prevent emotions from killing a good deal. I've been in real estate for several years now, and I have experience both as a home buyer, as a buyer of investment properties, as a seller, and I've represented countless clients on both sides of the transaction. So I have seen firsthand how emotions sometimes can get in the way of a great deal getting to the closing table. They can cloud judgment. Sometimes ego gets in the way, and unfortunately, the most common result of emotions getting in the way is stress, agitation, and sometimes a good deal dying unnecessarily. And look, I get it. For most people, buying and selling a home is one of the most important decisions they'll ever make. Let's face it, it's one of our most important assets. For most people, it's the biggest part of their net worth. Right? So inevitably, emotions will be involved. So I'm not going to suggest in this video that you should be completely emotionless. We're not robots, right? We're human beings. But I want to discuss ways you can mitigate an emotional response that leads to the deal falling apart. And in this video, I'm going to talk about 5 ways I think you could do that. So the first one is step away. Take a few hours or take a whole day and don't respond. If you're on the seller side and you got an email from the buyer's attorney with what you think are unreasonable inspection requests, don't respond right away. Take a break. Step away from your phone, step away from the computer, and if you still feel angry in a few hours, give it a night. Sleep on it. In the morning, talk to your significant other. Talk to your realtor. Talk to your attorney, and let cooler heads prevail. You'll be better off if you do that. Because a lot of times, if we respond right away, we're letting our emotions dictate the response and not the rational part of our brain. So that's step number 1. Take a break. Number 2, empathize. We all need more empathy in the world we live in today. And that is very true in real estate as well. We are all human beings. We have our different backgrounds, our preconceived notions, our viewpoints, frankly, our baggage, right? We're not buying and selling real estate dealing with robots or artificial intelligence, at least not yet. So just step back and realize there is another human being on the other side of this transaction, and they have their own emotions and their own points of view. So I think empathy is crucial because it helps you put aside your own ego, which inevitably gets involved, right? We all have our egos and they play a role. And put yourself in the shoes of the other party. So let's say you are the buyer and you feel like the sellers are being stubborn or hard-headed or unreasonable. Well, put yourself in the shoes of the sellers. Maybe they've lived in that home and they raised 3 kids there and they've been there for 25 years. And for them, they can't imagine living anywhere else. And now they have to downsize. Maybe they're moving to Florida, or maybe they're going to a retirement home if they're an elderly couple. For them, it's a huge decision, and there's a lot of emotion involved. There's 25 years of history, in some cases longer. So, put yourself in their shoes and you'll understand this is very difficult for them. They're going through a very difficult process, and sometimes they might respond in ways that you might perceive as hard-headed, but to them it's like, well, this is how we're approaching it. Now, on the flip side, if you're the seller and you think the buyers are extremely unreasonable in what they're asking you to fix or what they're asking for you to provide a credit for after the inspection, put yourself in the shoes of the buyers. Maybe it's a newly married couple and they're expecting their first child and they've never bought a home. They've been renting their whole lives. And they're now buying, let's say $1 million house, which is not uncommon in our market in North Jersey, or even 800,000, right? For them, that's a huge decision, and it's scary, and they're stressed, and they're nervous, and they're expecting a baby. Maybe to you it's unreasonable, but to them, the things they ask for is quite reasonable. So if you empathize with the buyers and you put yourselves in their shoes, you'll realize, you know what? They're just nervous first-time buyers, and maybe I could find a way to cooperate, find a compromise, find a way to move forward so that we both reach our goals. Which actually brings me to point number 3. And point number 3 is zoom out. Take a bird's eye view of the whole situation. Put emotions aside and zoom out of the moment you're in where emotions are heightened and you're thinking of maybe an angry response or brusque response, and think about why you got into this transaction in the first place. If you're the seller, why are you selling? What are you trying to accomplish? Why did you accept this offer? If you're on the buyer side, why did you make that offer? Why were you ecstatic when your agent said your offer was accepted? If you focus on the big picture by zooming out, you'll remind yourself why you're in this transaction in the first place. And that might help you overcome some of the heightened emotions in the moment. So I think zooming out and looking at it from the bigger picture oftentimes helps resolve your own internal mental conflicts and perceived notions of the other side being reasonable or unreasonable, cooperative or hard-headed. Point number 4, separate the people from the property. Look, I'll be very honest with you. There have been some transactions where the other side, the side opposite my clients, have been extremely difficult to deal with. In some cases, very unreasonable. And it's been very tough. And luckily, usually I'm able to help my clients navigate past that and get to the closing table. And sometimes deals have fallen apart. I mean, anyone who's been in real estate long enough has experienced deals falling apart. Whether you're a realtor, a buyer, or a seller, it's also kind of part of the business. But separating the people from the property is key, especially if you're dealing with a very difficult counterpart. So I remind my clients all the time, whenever there's a difficult seller, if I'm representing buyers or vice versa, I tell them, look, you will never see each other. In most cases, buyers and sellers never meet. There are rare exceptions, like sometimes the sellers will be leaving the house when you show up for a showing or an inspection. Other times the sellers might shake your hand at the final walkthrough and leave you a little gift. That's rare, but it has happened. Usually that's when the transaction goes extremely smoothly and the parties like each other. But I would say 95% of the time, the buyers and sellers never meet face to face. So even if you hate the other side, focus on the goal, getting to the closing table, because obviously you like this house enough to make an offer and to get under contract and to go through paying the inspector and paying for the appraisal, right? And paying for the title search. So if you're 2 weeks away from closing and the seller does something to really, really upset you, separate the house you're under contract to buy from the people selling it to you. Because frankly, if you close in 2 weeks, you will never see them or hear from them again. They won't be at closing. Even their attorney won't be at closing, right? So literally, you just got to get to the closing table and you never have to think of these people ever again, and you will never interact with them ever again. So I think that's an important point, and not to let their behavior or your perception of their behavior, whether reasonable or unreasonable, cloud your perception of the property. In the case of the buyer, the home you're trying to buy, right? Because they might be the worst sellers in the world, but it might be the best home for you, a home you will grow to love very quickly, right? So ask yourself, a month from now, will I care how difficult these sellers were? 2 months from now, 6 months from now, a year after you close? Of course, the answer is no, you won't care. You will have long forgotten about them because you're enjoying your new home. You've settled in, and now this is, you've made it yours. So don't forget, whenever there's a moment where you're like, I want to strangle these people, separate them from the property. And last but not least, the 5th point. If things go badly and there's a stumbling block and you think that you can't overcome it, ask yourself, is this problem worth killing the deal over? In some rare cases, the answer will be yes. Some things are insurmountable. That's why sometimes deals fall apart. But in most cases, the answer is probably no. So do that as the litmus test. We have a problem. There's a stumbling block, whether it's, driven by emotions or something else. Is this problem worth killing the deal over, or am I better off finding a way to cooperate and to potentially compromise? If the answer is yes, then you have to figure out a way to do that, because in most cases, there is a solution. It's just a matter of figuring out what that is. And again, consult your significant other, consult your realtor, consult your attorney. That's what they're there for. Most of the time, there is a way to get to the finish line. So always ask yourself, is this problem worth killing the deal over? Because sadly, I've seen deals fall apart over things that were not necessarily deal breakers, right? And we sometimes have to remember to put our egos aside so that we can get to the finish line and achieve our goals, right? Ultimately, that's why we're in real estate. If your goal is to buy your first home, focus on that. If your goal is to sell your house, cash in on the equity and downsize, or retire into a smaller rental with much lower overhead, focus on that, right? If we can do that, we can keep our emotions in check, keep our egos in check, and achieve our real estate goals. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned something from it, and I will talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching.